And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well, that you had a very nice week. And I welcome you back for another interview on Twitch with a very special guest tonight. You will see during the interview, I'm pretty hype about this. So our guest, as you may have seen, is Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager. She's an EU Commissioner, so she works in the European Commission. She's from Denmark. She's been in the European Commission as a Commissioner since 2014, so it's a second mandate. And since then, she has become one of the highest profile in EU politics. She's a bit of a star in Brussels, and notably and even beyond Brussels because of her actions throughout the two mandates to tackle big tech and also a number of anti-competitive practices. So something she's very well known for is for ordering billions of euros of worth of fines against companies such as Apple, Starbucks, Fiat, Amazon, and the like. So she became a bit the symbol of the EU's muscle, let's say. Since 2019, so this mandate, she's what we call now an executive vice president, and she's in charge of a Europe fit for the digital age, which includes topics such as competition policy, so a traditional portfolio, but also fair digital taxation, long-term strategy for EU industrial future, and AI. Among other things, there's plenty of things behind that portfolio. We could spend hours talking about it. We will discuss the impact of her work during the past two mandates, and also we'll cover unfair taxation practices, the direction of the EU industrial and defense policy, policies, and everything. As you know, I prepare my questions. You are, of course, free to suggest questions, to react in the chat. I will keep an eye on it. And I will read the questions if they are relevant, if we have time. So you know how it goes. Timing-wise, we have about 45 minutes with Ms. Vestager. After that, she will go. She will enjoy the rest of her evening, and you will be stuck with me for another 30 to 45 minutes to discuss with you what you thought of the interview, answer additional questions, give you an additional context, this sort of thing. So more casual conversations. As usual, so yeah, like I said, I prepared my interviews. Of course, I prepared my interview, I prepared my questions. But yeah, I think I covered the basics, so I suggest that we start. Good evening, Commissioner Vestager. Thank you very much for being with us tonight and answering our question. Like I was saying a bit before the interview, I believe you're the first EU Commissioner to come on Twitch, so I will bring that to my Hall of Fame. So I'm very happy that you agreed to join us tonight. You heard me do a very brief introduction of who you are, what you do. Is there anything you would like to add about yourself before we start the interview per se?
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for doing this. I have been looking forward for it. I enjoy what you do on Twitter. I think it's important. Well, it's not Twitter anymore. It's X. But I think it's good that you're persistent, saying that there is always something fun to be said about what happens in the European Union. It's appreciated. Other than that, my favorite shows would be late night satire, comedy. That I like very much. And I'm the mother of three and a grandma, so all of that makes me quite old. But these are important things in my life because, of course, work takes the most of my time, but life should not just be work.
That's perfectly fine by me. Thank you for the compliment. But unfortunately, we have to go back to work. So like I said in the introduction, you became famous in Brussels and beyond for your innovative approach to antitrust, to competition policy. And notably, you considered that preferential tax deals between member states and companies, so for instance, when Ireland was taxing Apple for only like 0.005% of their profit, you consider that as a form of illegal state aid. And so billions of euros worth of taxes were not collected, which was giving this company a competitive advantage. The CJEU, unfortunately, has not agreed with a number of your analysis since then. With now the few years down the line and in all these court cases, etc., do you still consider this approach regarding linking tax deals and anti-competition policies is still valid despite the some of defeats you faced in the CJEU?
Well, it is indeed true that we have lost cases. Some we have appealed, but the thing is that while the courts, of course, says you could not do this, we do not agree with you, they still say that it is valid to have this approach. And I think it is really important. the tax debate have moved a lot since I had the first tax cases. So some member states have changed their tax legislation within OECD, and that is actually more than just the OECD countries. So I think in total 179 countries have agreed that corporate taxation should be at least or a minimum of 15% effective taxation. But there's still quite some way to go. But I think it's really important that we have tax justice, because, most companies, they work really, really hard to make a profit. From that profit, they pay their taxes, and they are faced with competitors who do not contribute to the society in the same vein. The society that enables them actually to do their business because of the roads and the educated people and the research and all of that a society brings that enables you to do your business.
And so, like you said, the court did not dismiss completely your approach. They say, okay, maybe the commission didn't do some things right, but the approach remains valid. So, what lessons did you take from these court cases? Like, how did you then strengthen or change a bit the way your services, DG Comp, was approaching cases in light of these court cases?
Well, for instance, the court has said it's not enough that a country says we will use these OECD rules. They have actually to have them fully implemented in their national legislation. So we said, okay, fine. So my colleague, Paolo Gentiloni, who's responsible for tax, he has made a proposal to make member states actually really have these rules within their own legislation. And that's a way of learning sort of in a general manner. Also, more specifically, we lost a Belgian case because we thought of that as a scheme. But the court said, well, yeah, maybe a scheme, but maybe also individual cases. So here we have sort of redone the entire case. Because I think it's really, really important in a union where we are based on the rule of law that we're very carefully trying to learn from the courts, but of course also to do what we can for the courts to relate to new issues. Because for me, if I had never lost a case, I think I would have thought afterwards, oh my God, you never sort of pushed the envelope. You never tried anything new. And one should, of course, be very careful. But I think it is important once in a while that you are willing to take a risk if you are in a new territory. It can also be a merger case where we now are looking at many more cases where a big company wants to buy a small company. This is new. And one of the prohibitions that we have just had is now in front of the court. So, of course, we are doing something new and we need the court guidance. I, of course, hope we win. We have really made an effort to win, but we might lose, of course, because the court is independent in its decision making.
Yeah, it's because you're trying to be innovative in the various approach that sometimes, well, the court will say, okay, that may be new, but that's not exactly how we should do things. And it's a bit of a trial and error. Like you said, these court cases, even if you lost some of them at the CJU, they raised awareness on a number of issues. Some member states changed their law, and it also shed a light on a number of tax deals that until now were a bit in the shadows. And we saw a number of member states always coming back in this case, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, or Ireland. And in the public opinion, these cases, along with all the debate on fair taxation, raised the question, but are these countries tax haven? Does the EU have tax haven on its territory? So, in your opinion, are these practices of doing preferential deal in those member states to give an undue advantage to some companies, does it make these countries tax havens to an extent?
Well, for me, a tax haven would be where everyone paid their fair share. And in that respect, I think the huge majority of the European Union is such a place. We have been going through, the tax authorities can give what we call a tax ruling to a company. So they assess, oh, this is the way we sort of assess our profits, what we can subtract from that profit, what is then our taxable income. And we have been going through so many of those tax rulings. And what we have found was that huge majority of that is actually well done. You know, we have proper tax authorities, and with new legislation, now they can cooperate even closer so that no one can escape. I think some still have a bit of way to go, but the progress in the last 10 years is actually quite substantial. In particular, if we get to that point where it is effective 15% that is being paid in tax. So not just formally 15%, because then there will be a lot of subtractions, but actually effective 15% to be paid in tax. When that materializes, I think we can say that we have taken a big step forward.
So a lot of your focus over the past 10 years has been fighting illegal state aid. But during this mandate, we've seen a bit of a shift because of the COVID crisis, where member states have been exceptionally allowed to use massively state aid to support their economy. And now many countries advocate for laxer rules in terms of state aid, whether it is to finance the answer to the US IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, or to help the EU develop its strategic autonomy in various sectors, green tech, defense, or whatever. What is your opinion on this movement towards, or this push on laxer rules regarding state aid?
Well, I don't sort of think about state aid as either being lax or being strict. I think about it in terms of what it is there to achieve. And you can say there are quite a number of sort of defensive measures. So for instance, during the pandemic, when businesses were asked to close, customers was asked to stay at home, a lot of money was poured in those businesses so they could de facto hibernate during the pandemic, so that the assets wasn't damaged. Same during the energy crisis. Member state helped businesses to pay their energy bills. Had that not been done, they would have had to close. Perfectly profitable businesses, they would have had to close, the assets would have been lost. And that is sort of to preserve or to defend in a crisis situation. Then we have aid, which is sort of much more sort of on the offensive, where we can see that the market will not deliver. And if you take the green transition, fighting climate change, this is a politically driven transition. Everybody went to Paris. They took the oath, we will fight climate change. The market has not been able to transform as fast as needed. So I think it's 100% legitimate for member states to say, well, we will actually support this transition so that we get what we promised to get. And also, if you look at an area as semiconductors, there is no sort of massive production of semiconductors chips in Europe. And I think it's important to say, well, if the market will not deliver this by itself, I think it's legitimate to say, well, member states can go in, give support. We can make sure that there is a European spillover so that more than just the country in itself gets benefit from it. And I think these are good examples of how it can happen that things actually could work well, because what we check once we approve of aid is it actually necessary, or would they make the investment by themselves? Is it proportionate so that the taxpayer doesn't pick up the entire bill, but that the private investor is also, investing massively? And is it done in a sort of an appropriate manner, so that even if some businesses, they get funding, they get subsidy, that they still have to compete in order to actually do their business. And that, I think, these are very important measures. But the one thing I think that's important to realize is that we cannot subsidize ourselves to be more competitive. Competitiveness cannot be built on subsidies. It can help here or there strategically, but it doesn't build competitiveness. Here you need competition as sort of the underlying driver. And then, of course, you need, education, you need research and development organizations, you need uncorrupt societies, quite a number of things that are essential. I just have to find a charger because this is so intense that I'm running out
Yeah,
of
no,
battery.
go ahead. No problem at all. So yeah, we'll unpack all this. But like speaking of state aid, so the Commission has authorized for a while exceptionally extensive amount of state aid. And at the same time, so we've seen a big increase in state aid, and notably between 2022 and 2023, we have seen 75% of the state aid that has been authorized by the Commission coming from two countries, France and Germany. So these two countries represented 75% of the state aid authorized in the EU, several hundred billions euros worth. I hope the battery is better now.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm good.
So I was saying between 2022 and 2023, when the Commission was authorizing much more state aid, 75% of the state aid that were authorized came from France and Germany. Is it for you the fact that two countries are just trusting all the state aid that are being offered? Is it for you a symptom of an issue, or it's more a sign that you have two countries that are big economies and that are used to using state aid, and the other are not yet used to do not know how to develop these kind of tools? Or how do you see this big discrepancy, let's say?
Well, the first thing I do when I see that kind of numbers is, of course, to see why, what really happened. And in Germany, they had two very big energy companies. I think together they were responsible for half of the gas storage in Germany. And they were in huge problems because they had long-term contract at low prices. But with the energy crisis, they have to buy at very high prices. So of course that didn't match anymore. And the majority of German aid actually went to those two companies. It was of course really important for the German economy because if they had gone bust, it would have been a huge problem. Yeah. So it's not that it's not important. It's just to say that the money paid out in Germany was not to sort of give every German business a head start that others did not have. And the second thing is that when you look at who spent what in terms of GDP, you'd see that actually Hungary is the biggest spender. And only then comes France and Germany and Italy. But that being said, it is more or less always so that no matter if it's as a percentage of GDP or is it in exact numbers, it's the same 5 countries who are spending a lot. A number of countries can either not afford it, or they do not have a sort of a tradition to do it, so they won't do it. So it's really important to keep track of competition, that our economy still has competition as a driver, and then of course to consider if we should have sort of more European ways of financing things, so that more European got the benefit of it. We have one feature which are sort of really big innovation projects, where member states support businesses, but they have to be more member states on the project, maybe up to 100 businesses. It can be innovation in batteries, it can be innovation in hydrogen, but also here we make sure that all the many businesses who still do not get a subsidy, that they can get part of the knowledge, that universities can get the knowledge and teach their students, that businesses who are not part of the project can get access to laboratories or pilot lines, all of that to make sure that there is a European approach to what we're doing.
Something that you mentioned earlier was the idea that for you, competition must be a driver for the betterment of the economy, to benefit the consumers, etc., etc. On the other hand, there are many people in the EU. I know in France there are many who, on the contrary, think that the EU rules on free market and competition are on the contrary detrimental, not only to public services, because they force an opening to competition in strategic sector like train transport, for instance, or that they prevent a number of practices that they would see as better for society or for the environment, whether, for instance, by discriminating against a certain company to ensure that there is only local products that are being used in schools or whatever. What is your take on this? On those who see EU competition law rules as a threat to public services or things that should be done to the benefit of all?
But first, we have a social market economy. We do not have, a completely sort of laissez-faire, sort of liberalistic, capitalistic economy. We have a social market economy because we put in, laws to prevent things from spiraling out of hand. We have environmental laws that prevent businesses from polluting. We have labor market laws that make sure that you're protected from things that could give you cancer, for instance. We have sort of made the market a thing where you protect the environment, you protect workers, you protect children. So these laws are theirs to fulfill their purpose. And within that framework, businesses compete in order to deliver better product, lower prices, the quality that consumers are asking for. And the second thing is that we have agreed that we want to have a single market so that I, as a consumer, I'm free to buy local products. But if I would want to buy something that comes from somewhere else, I'm also free to do that. And within the single market, we do not have barriers, trade barriers, tariffs, whatever it may be. So I think that is really important because it's the single market is part of what makes Europe attractive. It's a great place to do business. And actually, I think we could do more to make that single market work, because many businesses, they say there are too many barriers. This doesn't work. We have very national markets for telcos, those who provide subscription to your phone. Why don't we have a European single telco market? So I think that's the important thing, because we have, put limits on competition. Competition should serve its precise purpose of giving us affordable prices, good quality, innovation in products. And then other laws should protect us and the environment and us as workers. And I think it's really important that those things are seen in common.
Talking about the benefit to the consumer. So right now the Commission is right in the middle of implementing its new law, the Digital Markets Act. We now the so-called gatekeepers, the biggest company, have to implement a number of measures in terms of to ensure fair competition given of their size. And someone in the chat is asking about one specific part of the DMA, as it's called, is the question of interoperability of messaging apps. And the Commission has decided to not consider as a gatekeeper iMessage, so the messaging app of Apple. Are you concerned that this decision to not consider iMessage as a gatekeeper pursue the objective of actual interoperability in messaging? Because, for instance, apparently New York Times is reporting that iMessage is actively blocking interoperability in the field of messaging. Apparently the US enforcement agency are investigating the issue. So can you explain a bit the reasoning of the Commission in there?
So in order to be labeled a gatekeeper, you need to have, I think it's 45,000 monthly users and so many business users. So that there are sort of quantitative criteria. We can also make an investigation to say that based on qualitative criteria, you still function as a gatekeeper for your business users, for your end users. We have, if you are designated a gatekeeper, you have a number of obligations. And one of the important thing is, of course, that if a messaging services is asking for interoperability, they should be able to have it. All of this will only really come to life on the 7th of March. On the 7th of March, those who are designated gatekeepers in their core platform services, they will have to report what have we done. And in the following days, we will have sort of workshops where every gatekeeper can present what is it that they have been doing, and where the businesses who should benefit from a much more open market, that data is not being combined without consent, that you can have another app store on your phone, that you can have apps that doesn't come from an app store, just to mention a few things. Once we have listened also to the third parties who should benefit from all of this, we can say, okay, do we have compliance, or do we think that there is no compliance here? And then, of course, we'll open cases of non-compliance that may end with quite hefty fines on the businesses if we find that they do not comply.
Yeah, but this relies on the Commission in the first place considering this part of the services as gatekeepers. So if the Commission does not consider them gatekeepers, they will not have to comply with the DMA. In the case of iMessage, the Commission has taken a decision not to consider them as gatekeepers, despite the size of their impact on the market and the fact that apparently iMessage is actively preventing interoperability, so preventing competition in the field of personal messaging.
Yeah, but obviously we are bound by the law. You know, we can only designate a gatekeeper if the gatekeeper lives up to certain obligations. You may grow into becoming a gatekeeper, that is quite obvious. It's a dynamic situation. It's not that only those who were designated in the first round will forever be gatekeepers. You can fall out of being a gatekeeper and you can grow into being a gatekeeper. So I think that is the key to say, well, we will see in the future. And it may also be that we will start, to see, should we, instead of using the quantitative criteria, use qualitative criteria because of the role that a certain service plays in the market, even though they do not live up to the numbers in the legislation.
Going with from the DMA in this topic, another expression that has come up again and again this mandate is the expression of European champion. Notably, whether antitrust rules should be adapted to allow the emergence of European champions to face big American or big Chinese companies. France, for instance, at the beginning of the mandate had criticized the decision of the Commission to block the merger of Siemens and Alstom to face the Chinese competitors. In your view, if big European companies cannot merge, how could a European champion ever emerge? Or do you think that the notion of European champion is a bit overrated, or something that is, let's say, more communication fluff than a reality?
Well, a couple of comments. First, we have European companies who are really successful in the global marketplace. Only they're not gigantic companies, but they are definitely market leaders in their fields. Second, you're more than welcome to grow in size. If you are successful in the European market, well, you grow and your competitors, they lose out. Where we take issue is if you want to buy market share. So not grow naturally or organically, but grow because you buy another business. And exactly the Siemens Alstom case, I think, is interesting. Here, most of the case was fine for the matter of the argument. Let's say 80% was good. In two markets, we had very serious problems. So in very high-speed trains and in mainline signaling. So the signaling that keeps us safe because trains do not run into one another. Europe is in the process of switching all its signaling in order for trains to be able to run faster, to be more on time, to have more traffic. Europe is also in the process of having many more high-speed trains in order to be able to skip part of the flying and take the train instead. So really important markets. Here, it turned out that the businesses that were merging, they could find no solutions to those competition problems. And if you cannot find a solution to a competition problem that is really serious, then we need to block the merger. Also, we could not find that this Chinese threat was credible. So now, 5-6 years later, we have looked at the market for these things, for high-speed train in particular. The Chinese company is still big in China, but that is basically a market that is also not open, at least only partly, for other companies from outside of China. And for the rest of the global market, there are two companies that are doing very well with filled order books, and those two are indeed Siemens and Alstom. So looking at the market, as said, we did not see the Chinese coming back then, and they have indeed not come. And the companies, they are doing very well also when they compete against one another. And I think it's really important to think of competition as a driver to do better. Because we have seen over the history, if one has read economic history, that what happens in a monopoly is that they grow lazy and they think more about protecting their market than to develop what it is that they deliver. So I think it's really important to say, well, congratulations if you grow your business organically. If you want to buy market share, then perfectly fine. If there is still someone that customers can turn to, if you have less innovation or higher prices. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that you should be protecting businesses within the European market, believing that they can do better in the global market. I think competition at home is what trains you to the competition in the global market.
Very clear. Last year, the European Commission tried to hire a new chief economist for DG competition. And one person that came out of the process was the American economist Fiona Scott-Morton. That triggered quite a backlash, particularly in France, against the fact that the Commission would hire someone at such a high level who would be American, who had worked in the past for big tech companies. And following that outcry, she had to resign under the pressure. Beyond the specific case of Fiona Scott-Morton, do you think that EU institutions should be able to recruit from people from everywhere in the world, even if they work for big companies, no matter how high the position? Or do you think there are, in some cases, vulnerabilities that could be created and that then should force the Commission to say, okay, there we shouldn't reserve the job for a European or someone who has not worked for this or that company?
No, I definitely think that the main rule should be that people working in the European Commission are Europeans, have a European passport. And that is the dominant rule for 99 point something. I think you'd find a Norwegian here or there, or maybe a Swiss person. But that is the main rule. Here, not that many people actually are that interested in becoming chief economist. It's a position, sort of, it's a third ranking position. You take no decisions, you're an advisor. So we thought, well, better sort of make the call for interest an open call, so without the demand of a certain passport. And we had the possibility of recruiting quite a remarkable economist, Fiona Scott-Morton. In the process, I think actually quite a number of Nobel laureates, they vouched for her, also French ones of the sort. But as you say, the pressure, especially from France, became very high. The French president went in and was really not happy about it, so she withdrew her application. Later, it turned out that the French Competition Authority, I think that chief economist is from Malaysia, so it's not unheard of. But here we are, and we have just opened again for calls for interest for to be a chief economist, and here we have not made an exception for the need to have a European passport.
Okay. Moving beyond the scope of competition, we talked a lot about competition. That's the field you've been most active over the past 10 years. But you're also responsible on digital policy as part of your function as executive vice president. The ambition of the EU in the digital policy is to harness big tech and put an end to a number of malpractices. So that's why we had the DSA, we had the DMA, now we have the DI Act. Looking a bit to the future, what are, let's say, the areas of digital policy that you think should be the next step for the EU? Where should the EU focus its attention in the future when it comes to digital policy?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is to make sure that the legislation that has now been passed is actually implemented and enforced. Because, out of respect of the legislator, but also because it means something. When you pass legislation, and that can be very difficult, you change mindsets, you may change the perception, but when you start to implement, you change behavior. It's much, much, much more difficult to change behavior than to change how you think about things. So I think that is the first. And the second is for people to see that this legislation also enables innovation, also enables investment in technology. I think Europe has a lot to offer, for instance, when it comes to AI in machinery, so that when you have the combination of the two things. And I think it's important to focus on that, because if one just keeps legislating, and never pause to see if it's working, well, then you just add on burdens on businesses instead of saying, well, did we succeed? The Digital Markets Act is there to make sure that the market is open, so that it's up to the business owner if they're successful and not up to the gatekeeper. The Digital Markets Act is there to make sure that digital services are actually safe and not dangerous to use. The AI Act is to make sure that if artificial intelligence is used in situations where there is a risk for people being discriminated, that extra care is taken. And some use cases are even forbidden. But other than that, go ahead, make the best use of it. So I think it's really, really important to make sure that we enforce in full, while pushing for the best possible use of all the assets we have for innovation. We have, within the last 5-10 years, invested in hyperscale computers in Europe. Now we are trying to make those available for smaller businesses who would like to have access to that kind of compute power to build their own artificial intelligence. And still, we have the Declaration of Digital Rights and Principles, and some of them are not fulfilled yet. Many people, they still don't have, just the basic skills to sort of maneuver in a very digitalized society. So there's a lot of things that should materialize in real life. And that will also, it would take dedication, a passion to make things happen, and really, really focus on making sure that these laws actually becomes real life.
And speaking of new technology and the AI and other field in which the EU is rather advanced, another thing that has popped up in this mandate is the idea of the EU protecting this sort of technologies from the outside. So, for instance, there's been discussion about the EU controlling the way certain technologies could be exported outside of the EU, notably in quantum computing, in AI, so that it doesn't necessarily end in China. There's been the whole affair around the Dutch company ASML, if I recall correctly the name, about chips in computer, super chips and all that. Do you think that this digital aspect of the EU is indeed something that needs to be protected, and sometimes say no, okay, we are fine with the market, with commerce, etc., but at the same time it should not end up in some places?
Yeah. No, I definitely think so. Ursula von der Leyen said that, for instance, towards China, we should de-risk, we should not decouple. And now we are trying to give muscle to that headline by analyzing the risks within artificial intelligence, advanced semiconductors, quantum, and artificial intelligence. Biotechnology. So these 4 areas. In order to have an assessment about where are the risks, we're not suggesting to have sort of a EU competence, but we're suggesting that member states, they use their national competence through sort of a European lens as to what is risky, where should we take extra care. Because the thing is that you can start a turf war like this, by suggesting that competences are moved from member states to the Commission. So instead of starting a turf war, we are focusing on, the substantial need to take more care in certain technologies so that technology is not leaking or sort of seeping away where we actually need it. Because, for instance, advanced semiconductors, they can be used to make really, really advanced weapons. Maybe we don't want that. For my opinion, I don't want that. When it comes to quantum, quantum is, if you have a combination of quantum hardware and quantum software, you have a really, really powerful machines when it comes to decryption, because it can sort of go both ways. So I think this is absolutely crucial. So both when we trade with other countries, but also when we have research cooperation. Investigative journalists, they found that in more than, I think, 2,900 something instances, there has been research cooperation from Europe with the Chinese Military Institute. Not illegal, but maybe not ideal either. So also for research to have, tools for the due diligence to sort of assess, is there a risk that the technology that we're working on will actually sort of side the way to use cases that we actually do not approve of.
I'm looking at the time, so we're closing to 8 o'clock, so I will not take too much of your time. I will go into my final question. So now it's been 10 years that you've been commissioner on competition and everything else. Over these past 10 years, what is the thing that you did as commissioner that you're the most proud of?
Well, there are really many things to choose from. I really like what we have done on taxation. I like what we did during the crises to enable member states to help out, both during COVID, during the energy crisis. So it's really, really hard to choose. But to say what I'm most proud of is actually that all the things we do with not that many people. We're in the process of implementing the Digital Markets Act after antitrust case after antitrust case after antitrust case against Google, Amazon. Now we have cases with Facebook and with Apple, with Microsoft as well. I'm proud of this work because I think it serves other businesses that they can do better business. They can serve their customers better. And I'm really proud of the people who works in GD Comp and the team that I have close to me, because I think they do an incredible work. They are faced with, law firms where people are paid in a completely different manner. They are faced with mergers where the merging parties, they get, I don't know what is in a bonus, and they get their normal salary, but they have a dedication to serve Europeans and to make sure that the market also serve us as humans. And instead of choosing that case or that case or that case, I'm immensely proud of this culture and this passion to make it work.
How big is DigiComp, by the way, in terms of people?
I think if you counted them on a Tuesday, there would be around 900 people.
Okay. And final questions. Your mandate ends in November, so there's still a few months of work and many things to do. But after November, what would you like to do next? What is next for Margrethe Vestager?
Well, that remains to be seen, because I don't know, so I can't tell you. But we can make the agreement that when I know, I will tell you.
That's perfectly fine by me. And on this note, it's 8 o'clock. I promise that I will free you after 8, so I will keep my word. So thank you very much for being with us tonight again and answering our question. The chat was, I'm sure, is very happy. So chat, make sure to thank Mr. Vestager for time. You can follow her on X. You see here below the video feed the at. And on this note, Ms. Vestager, I will leave you to it. Thank you very much for taking the time again. Chat again.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for being passionate about competition and digitization. It's really great to share a passion about something that some people think is very technical, but that I really, really think is essential in a society, that we are respected as customers when we are served by a business. So thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, have a good evening, Ms. Vestager. Bye-bye.
Yeah, likewise. Take care.
All right, chat. Let me unplug everything, and in the meantime, let me know what you thought. Up, tac. Hello, Mateusz. So. Let me know what you thought of the interview. I hope you're happy. First commissioner that ever comes on Twitch, as far as I'm aware of. I hope it's true. I will take, like I said in the introduction, like I will take that to my grave and the first person who brought the commission to Twitch. So I'm very happy that she took the time to answer a question for so long, because 45 minutes, it's a bit shorter than the interview that I do usually, but for a commissioner, it's very long. I was told by, I'm in contact with other cabinets of commissioners, the norm for an interview with a commissioner is more 20 minutes. It's not 45 minutes. So I'm very happy that she agreed to do such a long format. Let's say for this kind of thing. There's plenty of things we could have discussed. I'm sorry for those whose question I could not take. We could be there for 3 hours and still just talking about the beginning of everything that she has done over the past 10 years. But I'm very happy. I hope it's the first of many commissioners that will come on the channel. As Andreas is saying, I'm working on that. I hope that if there are people at the commission watching us, you see, it's not that bad. You tell your boss to come over, and it will be fun. It will be fine. We don't bite everything. He's doing work. He's doing fine. You're working on inviting commissioners to yeah, it's complicated. It's a bit complicated. I do imagine to bring a commissioner to Twitch. Well, that's not as different as bringing an MEP on Twitch. You write to the cabinet and you say, hey, I'm doing this. Would you like to come for an interview to talk about the EU, what you do, blah, blah, blah. And then you hope very hard that they agree with the principal. Sometimes you have to have a call with the cabinet to explain a bit how it works, how things would be organized, this sort of thing. But and then comes the struggle of finding a date, because commissioners are very busy people. So it needs it can take a bit of time to find someone who has time and is willing to join. But hopefully, to be fair, I scored very high for the first time, bringing one of the most hyped person in the commission for interview. For the first time, not too bad. Now I hope that I will be able to keep the rhythm, and that other commissioners will be inclined to come over. But yeah. Next up, Ursula. I asked Ursula already, but unfortunately, the cabinet told me that it was not possible. It was not possible agenda-wise. You send me a DM, so okay. Well, thanks for coming over, Mateusz. Thank you very much. How long in advance do you need to ask to find a slot? For the commissioners, I wrote. There's a couple I wrote to in December, but other ones, for the most part, I did in January. I started. Not everyone. I didn't write to the entire commission. I said, okay, I'm going to try a few that I think would be very interesting. So I said I tried them first. I had some back and forth, etc. But yeah, usually for instance, the tonight the interview with Ms. Vestager, we set that up a month ago or something like that. Easily a month ago, I would say. So yeah, you don't call up the cabinet to say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Do you have an hour next week to come on Twitch? That's less than you could have bet. Again, it depends. We are a bit at a time where there's less, there may be less legislation coming out, so maybe they have a tiny bit more time. It's a question of priorities that they have of the media strategies. Some commissioner may be more outgoing to go do these kind of things than others. We shall see. But in any case, I'm very happy to to have Margrethe Vestager with us tonight. Like I explained in the introduction, she's a bit of a legend here in Brussels. She's had many nicknames, the Queen of Europe. I know that back in Denmark, she's called Margrethe III in reference to one of the previous queen, Margrethe II. She's Trump notably called her the tax lady. Because he wasn't happy on how much she was going after US companies. So yes, very, very high profile, and she managed to do something that was that very few people managed to do in EU politics, which is to be working on very technical things like competition law. It's not exactly the funniest topic. Like if I tell you, okay, we're going to talk about competition law, many of you might not be keen on staying. But she managed in a 2 mandate now as commissioner to make that topic maybe not popular, but to put it in a light that is speaking to people. She's able to. She's very down to earth, as you saw. She's able to explain complex things in a way that is understandable for her, for everyone. She has a good communication sense. So she was very good into becoming, let's say, a bit of the face of the EU. And also, since the actions that she's been taking since she became commissioner were a bit high profile. Like when you go out of your way and say, okay, I'm going to inflict a fine of several billion euros to a company, people tend to notice because certainly it was the mark of the EU going out there, showing the muscle, especially against big companies. So it played into a narrative that was appealing and that was also talking to people. So she was very successful in doing that. She has a lot of habits that make her like a bit unusual, and so even more attractive. Like she's known because she's known for many things. Like she in meetings she likes to knit. So she's taking in Parliament. Sometimes you see her. It's a passion she shares with Commissioner Johansson. She takes starter kit and she starts knitting during meetings or during plenaries. She is known. I made a fun fact about that today on Twitter. She is known for having a statue in her office of a middle finger that she got when she was Danish Minister of Economy. She's very well known for many different things. You can see her on the market in Brussels on Sunday. So she built on this idea of being someone approachable, someone reliable. That's not the word. Relatable. Someone that looks like the everyday person. And I think that's something that played a lot into her success, especially during the first mandate. This second mandate was a bit more complicated for her because during the first mandate, so 2014, 2019, she was by far like probably the most visible commissioner apart from Jean-Claude Juncker, so the president of the Commission. She was going cases after cases after cases. Apple, Amazon, Starbucks, Fiat, everyone was getting their big fines. So very high level during the first mandate. And the second mandate was a bit more complicated for her for several reasons. First, many of the cases that she started during the first mandate, obviously the companies challenged them in court. And well, she did get, and we discussed that during the interview, she did get a few losses in court where the CJEU said, well, actually, the Commission did not do its work properly, and we are cancelling or we're reducing the fines that these companies got. Actually, I will show you an article that I found that is rather interesting to that end. Just give me a sec. Bam. So that's an article from Euronews, and here you have a bit the state of play of all the competition cases that Margrethe Vestager launched as commissioner since 2014. And you see there's a lot of red there. So all these are being investigated or have been in course. And you can see that some of the biggest cases like Starbucks, Amazon, Fiat, McDonald's, NG were rejected in court. But as the commissioner said, they did not rebuke the commission on the angle. They didn't say, okay, the whole strategy, the whole angle that they pursued is wrong. So the fact that so let me go back to the beginning. The key novelty of Vestager when she arrived at the Commission in dealing with competition case was that no longer the Commission would try to settle with companies, like they would agree to change some things in exchange, and in exchange they would not get a fine. Vestager took a more aggressive approach and said, okay, we're going to go on the offensive. And furthermore, instead of looking just at what the practices of the company, we're going to look at the relationship they have with member states. And particularly the tax deals that some companies have with Luxembourg, with the Netherlands, with Ireland, where these companies basically, when they arrive in the country, they will tell the tax authority, okay, I might come to your country, establish myself in your country, do a simulation, tell me how much tax you would make me pay if I was to come there, and let's make a deal. And so the tax authorities were making so-called tax rulings, so that they were doing a simulation of what they would make this company pay with reduction, etc., etc. And in the end, they say, okay, this is our simulation, and if you stay, this is what we commit to tax you. And some of these companies were getting absolutely absurd tax rates, like Apple, for instance, which was got a tax stake of 40 billion euros. They got taxed by Ireland in 2014, 0.005%. That was the tax rate Apple was paying in 2014, legally, because it was a deal with the Irish authorities. That's the level of taxes they were paying. And so the new strategy under Margrethe Vestager was to say, okay, this kind of tax deals might be anti-competitive behavior. There might be competition law breaches. Why? Because since these deals are only given to these companies and they are giving huge advantage to these companies, it breaches competition. It gives an undue advantage to these companies compared to their competitors. And so that was the whole approach that she pursued against all these companies. And during this mandate, well, she got a few losses, as you can see, the rate that you see. She got a few wins as well when it comes to Belgian companies. And on Amazon, which one is it? I think it's Amazon. It's sorry, it's Apple. It's Apple. Apple is still in progress. And actually, she might be in a good position, if I recall correctly, because the legal advisor, the avocat general, so the main legal advisor of the CJU, has argued in favor of the commission in the case of Apple. So at the moment she's in good position when it comes to the case of Apple, and she needs the win. But like since the beginning of this mandate, she got a string of defeats in court. They were not like absolute defeat, because the court was not saying, okay, the whole approach is wrong. So okay, you need to adapt a bit the way you do things, these sort of things. And so like she said, okay, we adapted, but that's normal because we have innovative ways, and so we have to adapt things. And she said, yeah, beyond the court rulings, we still had an impact because of the debate that we triggered regarding the lack of transparency because of the tax practices. We de facto led to change of practices. A number of member states changed their practices. Now there's more transparency, there's more cooperation between tax authorities. So that, for instance, if Ireland gives a very favorable tax ruling to a company, other country will be able to know about it, and to potentially say, okay, this is not necessarily very, very good. Maybe you need to do something different. But yeah, there is a push. There's been a push at policy level for better, for less tax avoidance, more fair taxation. She also mentioned the deal that was concluded at the OECD, which notably there's several pillars, but there's one pillar that says that there must be a minimum level of taxation. The big companies must pay at the very least 50% taxation on their profits. And she insisted on that. It's not just 15% and then you can have a tax reduction, and in practice you're going to pay 5% or less. It has to be 15% after all the deductions. So it's 15 effective percent. So this is now it has to be implemented, but when it's being implemented, that would be a big win according to her, even if she has struggled in court since the beginning of this mandate. Another area in which she struggled more at a political level is when she had we had Monsieur Thierry Breton, who became commissioner, the French commissioner on the internal market and 100 of the portfolio. It became complicated for her because suddenly there was a bit. It was always seen that in this commission there was a bit of a competition between Vestager and Thierry Breton. Not only on the portfolio. On paper, she's higher level than him because she's now executive vice president, so she's basically at the second echelon of the hierarchy in the commission. But also in terms of philosophy, Margrethe Vestager, she's a Dane, she's a liberal Danish, so she said that she believes in competition, she believes in the free market. She doesn't necessarily is big on state aid, etc., etc. She's more of okay. Let the market work to the benefit of everyone. Thierry Breton is an industrialist. He looks like he comes from the industry, and so for him, he's been a big supporter of the idea of strategic autonomy, of let's say a more political use of the economy, of economic policies. The economy is no, he's not French socialist. He's not a socialist. He's affiliated to Renew Europe, but no, he's not socialist. I don't think he has ever been socialist. He's worked on the right-wing government, but I don't think he worked he's ever been socialist. I would have to look into his biography, but I don't think he ever was. But he has been more of a interventionist, and the idea, okay, the EU needs to have a bigger, to splash more cash, to develop its industry, to develop European champions, etc., etc. So you have two very different vision of how the EU market should work, and Thierry Breton has been, to an extent, more successful in that because of circumstances, because we had the COVID, because you had the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, and so there was a lot of push in favor of a more interventionist approach to the economy, more state aid, more the idea of reindustrializing Europe, in particular areas, defense, the green tech, etc., etc. So there's been more of a struggle, the struggle between Vestager and Breton has weakened a little bit also this mandate. She's done lots of things, but there's been this perception of this tension between two very different vision of things. And the fact that the Breton also has a strong personality, so she was no longer like the only commissioner in the commission who was hyped, let's say. He started RPR, so yeah, right-wing, French right-wing. Let's see. Did I miss something? Yeah, I missed a couple of questions. Sorry. You like the fact that eccentric in a good way European politicians are good against giant global companies doing wrong thing. Meta, yeah, she's this eccentric aspect of her personality played into the fact that she became noticeable, and that she was not like she's not the grey Eurocrat with a tie who stays very resting bitch face and not saying anything outside of the ordinary. She's outgoing. She's like someone you could have a discussion in the street and someone perfectly approachable. That's a big strength of her in terms of communication. Does the EU Parliament in general try a lot more to make more content on social media and become more visible? Almost nobody here will ever know more than a handful of people. Well, it's always a struggle. It's always a struggle for the institution. I see there's been progress. There's been a lot of progress, to be honest, in terms of social media communication in the institutions. Like, I'm pretty much a dinosaur at this stage. I've been here 10 years plus in Brussels. 10 years ago, the idea of an institution doing a meme, doing funny things on social media, going on Twitch, that was science fiction. That would be utterly unthinkable. And now the institution have embraced social media. They understand you have people who understand the culture of social media, and so they're much more outgoing. They're trying to be more visible. Some are more successful than others. For instance, if you want to see like one that in the commission, for instance, is extremely good. But the commission is a bit peculiar because the communication is not necessarily fully centralized. it's so you have the official account of the European Commission, but you also have accounts for the DGs. The DGs are the equivalent of ministries, so you have the DG on trade, the DG on competition, etc., etc., and they each handle their own communication to an extent, and some are much better than others. Particularly DG Trade, so the DG in the Ministry of Trade at EU level, they are S tier in terms of communication, and for a very long time. They probably, in my view, they're the best at social media communication in the Commission, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, the problem is that it's one thing to do good communication, then it's another to reach people out there, and you can do all the social media communication that you want. Ultimately, you also need the media, normal media, to relay it, and you come back to the good old issue that national media do not talk about EU politics. It's not necessarily people are not familiar with the way EU politics works, so it's complicated things. But at least in terms of social media savviness, institutions have exploded in terms of competence in there. So 10 years ago, I would have told you, no, they're crap at social media. Today, they are they're rather competent. Political groups as well are become rather good at social media. I would tend to say that on Instagram, I would say that they are above in terms of social media compared to X. TikTok, I don't know. I don't know really what people are doing on TikTok. I don't monitor TikTok too much. But Instagram, that's where I see the best kind of communications from the institution, the political groups, and all that. Who do you think could replace her in the next commission? I have absolutely no clue. Objectively, no clue. I know Thierry Breton could potentially be interested. Thierry Breton, although Thierry Breton would like also the internal market. So depending on how you structure the commission, you could have a Thierry Breton who could be interested in something, in doing something about that. But beyond that, yeah, it depends it will depend of the election. It will depend on who the member state decide to put. As the field become too important to leave it to a small member state, that's also going to be a political point, because, like I said, there is a tension between those who are more classic liberal economies, so let competition do its thing, let's limit state involvement, etc., etc. Even if we are in a social market economy, and we're not like a US style economy, and those who are much more like active, let's say, proactive in there. So there will be a struggle between member states on that. There will be a struggle between member states on that, but at the moment, the advantage is clearly on the side of political intervention into the economy to boost the industry. Like, next mandate is going to be big on industrial policy, so I expect that probably someone who is favorable to this approach will be put at the head of DG Comp. Let me check. Is there a maximum term limit for commissioners? Not as far as I know. As long as commissioners are reappointed by the member state and that they are being approved in the parliament, they can stay 2-3 mandates if they want. I think the longest servings were like 3 mandates, I would say. Don't quote me on that, but the bottom line is there's no term limit. It depends on whether the government decides to nominate that commissioner again, and if that commissioner wants to stay. But yeah, otherwise, what else? I have my notes as usual. Where else did we discuss? We talked a lot about state aid, like I said, so it was interesting because she said, oh yeah, in state aid, it's not just state aid good or state aid bad, it's a question of how do you use state aid. So state aid, it's whenever a government put money on the table to intervene in the economy, to support companies with public money. And she said, yeah, basically you have different ways to do good state aid, let's say. You can do defensive state aid. So there she mentioned specifically COVID, because during COVID, the situation was such that, the economy was going bad. You may remember that. Remember that because, well, you have confinement, etc. You have lockdown, so many companies could not work as usual. And so during seeing that, the Commission said, okay, we are in an exceptional situation. So exceptionally, temporarily, we're going to say, okay, member states, go ham on state aid, support your economy, because we need to make sure that the economy is not trashed by COVID. So we will be much more lenient when it comes to assessing your state aid. And so she was mentioning, of course, there she described it as a defensive measure, use of state aid as a defensive measure. It was about saving assets. So an asset is a company. Since this company could not function normally during COVID, state aid could be used to protect it, to allow it to hibernate, as she mentioned, and to allow it to survive until the end of the COVID crisis, and then it could go back to normal functioning. So it's about preserving what exists under exceptional circumstances, so that when things go back to a normal, you stop the state aid and you go back to business as usual. Then you have more offensive measure, aggressive measure, offensive, that's not the way she phrased it, but where you are, okay, you're saying, okay, the market is not creating the conditions sufficiently fast, for instance, to make a greener economy. And so there, member state needs to intervene to push things, to say, okay, market, you're not investing, fine, the state will invest to encourage you to invest as well and boost, let's say, the development of green tech, of the defense industry, this sort of thing. So it's more the idea, okay, we have a strategic interest in a number of things, and so then it's fine that the state intervenes to support this strategic objective, because the market is too slow to react to these things. That being said, so like I said, during COVID there was a relaxation, let's say, of these state aid rules, and so member states were free to do quite a lot of things. And what was interesting is that for between 20, so these rules were postponed until 2023. I think 2023, the Commission said they would be less flexible than before. But between 2022 and 2023, what came out is that you had two countries, France and Germany, that represented 75% of all the state aid that were authorized in 1 year. Two countries. Many countries see that as a demonstration of why you need to control state aid. Because why do you control state aid? Why is the EU controlling state aid? What the EU is saying sometimes, okay, we will not allow this kind of aid, because they see that as it breaks fair competition. You have several cases where it can be the case. Sometimes it's not about like boosting things to the benefit of consumer. It's just to protect what you have and prevent others from entering that market. And so artificially use state aid to give an advantage to a company, to a sector, so that it's not threatened by competition from other countries, from other companies. So it's breaking the market that is not justified. Also, there's a question of capacity. Because if you are a big economy, France and Germany, your capacity to throw huge amount of money at the economy and at companies to support them is much higher than if you are a small country. And so if you start saying, okay, state aid is good, you can go ahead, go ham on state aid, well, France, Germany will go ham. They will just throw billions at their companies to support them, to give them advantages. But if you are a small country, you do not have the same means, and you cannot keep up. If you are Slovenia, Slovenia would never have the ability to give the same kind of aid to a Slovenian company than the French or the German would do to a French or a German company. So in the end, it would give an undue advantage, an unfair advantage to the French companies, to the German companies, compared to the other. Why? Because all member states do not have the same capacity to churn out state aid and to support to boost their own company. So one reason also where you control state aid is to ensure that in a context where you have a single market, so French companies can compete with Polish, with German, with Slovenia, etc. Well, everyone is more or less at the same level. You know, the big economies will not have an unfair advantage compared to Polish companies, to Slovenian companies, just because the government is able to throw money. It's not linked to the quality of the product. It's not linked really to the competence, to the talent of the company. It's purely artificial. It's just my country is able to throw much more money at me than the others, and so I win at the end. So that's why you have state aid control, and that's why also smaller countries tend to not be so keen on very lax rules on competition on state aid, because they are afraid of big countries. And like I said, 2022, 2023, 75% of the state aid that were authorized under the exceptional rules were French and German. And a lot of smaller countries, were saying, look, there's the proof that things are wrong. We should reintroduce like state aid rules that are less laxed, because it's going to break the EU economy, because we're not able to compete, or we do not want to compete on state aid. So there, Margrethe Vestager said things may be a bit more nuanced. So for instance, she said, well, in Germany, yes, you had a huge amount of state aid, but they were actually very concentrated only in the field of energy. Why? Because since the German economy was boosted via cheap gas, that was the recipe, the recipe of the economic success of Germany since the beginning of the 2000s was two things: cheap gas from Russia and exportation to China. Of course, the war in Ukraine changed a bit things. The access to cheap energy was no longer possible, and so the German one of the pillars of the German economy would have gone down on the floor if there was no intervention. So that's why you had the German government throwing money at their energy company, because if these energy companies were failing, the whole German economy would have failed. So they say, okay, fine. Here it's also about preserving the assets. It's not about just giving an undue advantage to German company. Even if again it was criticized by other country when Olaf Scholz announced like a 200 billion fund to support German company, it was criticized by the other member state as unfair competition with other companies. But yeah, that was one argument. One thing I didn't know is if then you say, okay, you have the absolute number, but if you bring that back to the GDP, so how rich actually a country is, the one that spends the most on state aid compared to their GDP, so compared to how rich the country is, was Hungary, which I thought was interesting, and I didn't know that. But she said, yeah, there's still a practice where, regardless of if you look into the pure amounts or per GDP, you always see the same countries, the same 5 countries coming again. So the 5, I guess, would be France, Germany, Italy, apparently Hungary, and I don't know about the 5th. Sad fact is, in Europe there is far less investor compared to US who could finance large projects. It makes sense to have governments feel this role to some extent. Yeah, but again, that's why not all state aid are bad. You have rules on state aid, but not all state aid is bad. Like she said, sometime if you have a strategic interest in something, like if you want to make a greener economy, if you need to relaunch an industrial policy, because in terms of defense, or because you realize you're not shit, I forgot what I wanted to say. You're not autonomous. Like for instance, something that we realized during COVID is that a lot of the medicine that is being used in the EU, even most basic products, are produced outside of the EU. And so if you are in a crisis where trade is disrupted, the EU is not capable of producing even the most basic thing in terms of medicine. So there's been, since then, on a number of things, a push for reindustrializing Europe to allow it to achieve strategic autonomy. So the idea that the EU is not maybe 100% self-reliable, self-autonomous, but still, they could, to an extent, they could meet their own needs. So you see that in medicine, you see that in computer chips. You see that now there's discussion about defense. So you had a bunch of fields in where the EU realized that actually there was some vulnerability because of the deindustrialization of the EU, and so the member states are starting, and also the EU starts pouring billions in there to try to rebuild these capacities so that in case of problems, well, the EU is able to face a crisis. I said in percent and in raw number, France and Italy are in the top 5. In percentage for sure, so 75% is Germany and France. Germany being 50%, over 50%, and France 24-25%. Third, I know for sure is Italy. They have like 7%, and then the other I don't know in terms of percentage. But she did say, and that again, Natalia, know that if you look at stated compared to GDP, Hungary is very high as well. Big sum of the German COVID aid was focused on very small companies, less than 10 employees. Okay, I didn't know that. Hungary used those subsidies to incentivize for investment, but the electric battery plants, and she knew. The return on those is doubtful. Yeah, I mean, it's part, again, it plays into the push to reindustrialize. That's for sure. Then on the return on investment, that I don't know. We will have to see. What else did we talk about? We talked a bit about the DMA because of a question. I think he was a journalist. So I relayed his question. But on the DMA, so I will not go into the detail. But basically, the DMA, Digital Markets Act, is like one of the big digital file of this mandate. That is, how do you ensure that the biggest of the biggest digital companies behave in a manner that is not, let's say, bullying other companies. Like if you're Amazon, you can't use your market power, the fact that everyone has to use you, to get an unfair advantage. Like for instance, you cannot use the data that your competitors are generating when they use they use your service to compete against them. You have to share a bunch of data. If you're so-called gatekeeper, you have to do some things in terms of interoperability. So it's a bit of a list of things that a company, biggest of the biggest companies, are allowed to do or must do when it comes to their relations with competitors, to make sure that they don't break the market. Because a key thing that, so this DMA is interesting because it's a new approach. It's part of the new approach on digital policy and in competition policy, because until now we had competition policy, DG Comp. So DG Comp would say, okay, I noticed that this company, the practice that they have done has harmed the market, and so I will punish them for harming the market and force them to correct things. The problem is that to do these things, well, the harm must already happen. You need to see the companies to already harm competition, and it's only after the fact that the commission comes up and says, okay, you must stop doing that and you need to correct this. The problem is that since these cases, particularly when they involve big companies, takes a long time, and this company are so big that by the time the commission has finished its competition cases, and there are fines being inflicted, there are imposition of change of policies, this sort of thing. Well, the damage on the market is so high that it's not recoverable. Like they basically broke the market beyond recovery, and the competitors are dead. Like, okay, they were wrong, but they're dead, and they will not come back to life. And the competitive advantage that the big company achieved cannot really be moved because it arrived too late. And so that's why we have the DMA now. It's an ex ante approach. Is that you don't wait for the harm to be done. You don't wait for the market to be broken by the biggest company. Is before that you just say, okay, if you are that big, then whatever you do, you must do this thing, and you must not do this thing. So it's to prevent the harm from ever happening. So it's a preventive tool. So it's a way to limit the damage and not wait that it's done and then you can't recover. So it's part of this new trend of ex-ante tools. Like you say, okay, we want to prevent problems from happening in the first place, rather than just intervening afterwards and try to repair the damage when it's not recoverable, actually. We talked about a case that angered France, or we're going to speak about a couple of cases that angered France greatly at the beginning of the mandate. The merger between Siemens and Alstom, so two of the biggest train companies in Europe, one French, one German, and they wanted to merge together in 2019, or a bit before 2019, basically to become a big, a single European champion in the field of rail. And the idea was that the argument was say, yeah, we need to do that because there is China, there is the Chinese companies, they're subsidized, and so if we want to be able to face these companies, these Chinese companies, we need to be huge, we need to be big, and so we need to be able to merge Siemens and Alstom. And the Commission said no. The Commission said no because in some part of the market, that would actually harm competition. There would not be sufficient alternatives, and it would become a de facto monopoly of the new entity that would be created. And so that's why the Commission intervened in 2019 to forbid the merger. Because when you have big companies that merge together, so they combine, either in an amicable way or one buys another, it needs to be authorized by the Commission because of the impact on the market that it may have. So they have to say, hey, Commission, or any taxation competition authority, say, hey, we want to merge together these companies. Do you let us do that? And so they have to prove that it's not harming the market, etc. And so they must get the authorization. The authority may, in the US, in the EU, etc. And we say, okay, I will allow this merger, so you can go ahead. I will forbid this merger. I will allow it under certain conditions, etc. etc. And so you have to wait for this process to happen. And sometimes it's politically motivated. But sometimes governments have an interest in some mergers because it supports, let's say, one of their national champions. And so when in 2019 the Commission and Vestager forbade this merger, France was very pissed. France was extremely pissed, saying, "Oh yeah, you're preventing an industrial policy. We will not be able to face China, etc., etc." And here during the interview, she threw a little barb, saying, "Yeah, they were claiming that China was going to destroy us all. In the end, China is just on its market. It's not invading Europe, so." We didn't see the apocalypse that Alstom and Siemens were promising when they were trying to justify this merger. So he said, yeah, in the end, we were right to prevent this merger. And again, it plays into the idea of remember a bit what I was explaining about the tension between Vestager and Breton on the different philosophy. This is also the illustration of that. Is competition policy, state aid merger, etc., etc., something that is purely objective, that must not be politicized, that is must let's say let the market player do its thing to the benefit of consumers, or is it a tool of an actual policy, an active, like a government or EU policy to support the industry, to push the industry in one direction? And so again, you have this tension between the two, because in the case of Vestager, say, okay, objectively, this merger is not justified because it would lead to a lack of competition on the market. It would be bad for consumer, blah blah blah. And on the other end, France, who says no, competition rules must be at the service of an economic strategy. In this case, building European champions so that they can face Chinese, American champions, etc., etc. It must be difficult to decide between being economically strong against other global powers and having a more free market, being likely be more vulnerable to these other powers. That's the tension. And to an extent, there's been a lot of criticism on the past approach of the EU on that, because in a way people were saying, okay, the EU is the naive idiot. They're the only ones to play by the rules. Like, we're the good guys, we have rules, we follow the rules, but we're the only one to play by the rules. Because you look at the US are the champions of capitalism, etc. But there is no country more. Well, there are many countries that are more protectionist, but the US is extremely protectionist when it comes to protecting its own interests. You have the Buy American Acts. They can be very aggressive when it comes to taxation and to tariffs. So they are actually behind the idea of we're capitalist. We want to let the market do its thing. Actually, the US has a very politically driven approach on a number of things. And in the EU, well, if we are the only ones to play by the rules, well, in the end, like you say, we become more vulnerable to other powers. So it's always a tension of, you have rules, should we play by the rules, or should we acknowledge that all the others are not playing by the rules, so why should we not do the same? But it's not for sure, it's not an easy position to be in. That's for sure. What else did we talk? Fiona Scott Morton. The second time France got very, very unhappy with Margrethe Vestager is Fiona Scott Morton. Who is Fiona Scott Morton? She is an economist, an American economist, who was appointed last year at the position of chief economist of the DG competition. So she was the advisor on economic policy of the competition, the anti-competition, the competition force of the commission. And France was very unhappy about that because A, she was American, and B, she had worked in the past with US companies, and the people were saying, well, France, first and foremost, was saying, okay, chief economist is a strategic position. Why are we giving that to an American? Especially since most of the cases that DG Comp will have to assess are American companies. And on top of that, she had worked for some of these companies in the past. So, not that there has been, like, when she was hired, there were like measures that were taken to prevent conflict of interest, but basically she had a contract for 3 years, if I remember correctly, and out of the 3 years, for 2 years she was prevented from working on some of the cases that related to big American companies for which she worked. So, because that was the point of hiring someone if for 2/3 of the time she cannot work on some of the most high-level issues that the DG Comp will have to face in implementing the DMA, in implementing competition law, etc., etc. So France really was pissed off, and so through a tantrum and in the end, faced with the pressure, Fiona Scott Morton had to resign, and she was not happy about that. Like she kept bitching about it in the press for quite a while, saying that the way she was treated was unfair, that it was proved that the EU would fall behind because they're not happy to take competent people, whatever the color of their passports, etc., etc. To be fair, nobody contested the fact that she was competent, like Mr. Vestager was saying. She came with the support of many other economists, including Nobel Prizes, including some French ones, who were saying, yeah, she's legit. Let her have the job. But it became a political issue because she was American, because she had worked for big tech in the past, and so for the French, it was a bit triggering because we have this love-hate relationship with the US, and so it was unthinkable to have an American be having a high position in the commission. So when I questioned Ms. Vestager about it, she said, yeah, in principle, of course, it should be a European that should get European jobs in the commission. In practice, it's for the most part the case. But at some point, if you don't have these people with high competencies in there, well, you may take people from outside. Was it only a French thing? The French were the most vocal about it. I think some other countries were not necessarily happy either. At least they thought it was a political mistake to have done that. But it was the French. Mostly the French were the more vocal. That's for sure. For the French, he was casus belli. For the others, either they didn't care, or they were agreeing that putting someone who worked for them. For the other countries, it was less about the nationality, more about more about the fact that she had worked in the past for tech companies and so on. But for the most part, a French thing. And I found it funny, like when she again she threw a barb at France, saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, in the French competition authority, you have a Malaysian who is with at a high level, so it's not just us who are hiring a non-European at high level in the competition authority." I thought it was funny to underline that. But yeah, and now they're still looking for someone at the position, but now she said that they restricted it to European, someone with European passport, to avoid another drama about that. Otherwise, there's a few other topics that we discussed, but I don't think it's as important to discuss. Do you have questions or things you want me to comment? Otherwise, we've been at it for a bit more than an hour and a half. So otherwise, I will let you go. So, question time. Go ahead, tell me everything. Up. I'm closing a couple of things. There we go. Up. If there's no question, then I will conclude. Okay. No questions as far as I can see. So let's conclude. So I hope that you enjoyed this interview. I enjoyed it. It was like I said, I'm very happy to have had Ms. Vestager and the commissioner beyond that as the hosting her for an interview. I hope it's gonna open a new trend that other commissioners will be keen to come on the channel. That's my hope. Otherwise, next time I see you tomorrow for the French, we're having a news review as usual at 5 p.m. So do come to discuss the latest EU news. And otherwise, next week, let me pull up the agenda. We have one interview and then the classic news review. Let me check. Tac. Do I upload the interviews on YouTube? Yes. The interviews end up on YouTube. A bit of delay because I have to say that I tend to be tardy when to upload them on YouTube. I do them a bunch at a time, so this weekend I will upload a bit the latest interviews, but yeah, they will be on YouTube. Otherwise, they're on Twitch. They're available on Twitch. You go in the video tab and you have playlist of the interviews in French and in English, so you can find them in any case. So the interview, as soon as I finish the stream, I put it on Twitch, and it's gonna take a bit. Like this weekend, I will upload it on YouTube. And so next week, Tuesday, we have an interview with an MEP, Juan Lopez Aguila, with a Spanish SND MEP. He's the chair of the Libe committee who deals with migration. So we're going to talk about migration. We're going to talk about the migration asylum package. And then we're going to have the news review. I haven't decided yet on which date. On the Friday, it's going to be in French, but I need to find a slot for the English one. So I will let you know on Discord, etc. So, of course, perfect segue up. Let me put the links there, up, Discord, Twitter, all the good thing. Follow me there. That's where I put the news, the memes, and everything. And yeah, if you like what you saw, do follow the channel if it's not already the case. If you have a Prime lying around, do toss a coin to your streamer. That's always much appreciated. And otherwise, well, all that is left for me to do is to wish you all a good evening, a good weekend if I don't see you, and otherwise, I will see you next week for more interviews and more news reviews. Bye everyone, have a good one. Ciao.